Welcome to this episode of the Founders Speak podcast in collaboration with Couchonomics with Arjun. Joining me on the yellow table is Isa. She is the founder of a fintech called Madcash, which is quite a cool name, and it focuses on women entrepreneurs in Malaysia. I'm particularly fond of Malaysia. I've actually been there at least 2 dozen times. I used to run a business actually in Malaysia. So this is not about me. So Isa, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome
Thank
to the
you.
yellow
Thank you,
table.
Arjun. Yes, thank you.
Right. Great show. Have you
Definitely.
been walking around?
Yes, I could hit 10,000 steps every day in Malaysia.
Yeah, that's true, right? So I did 18,000 yesterday,
Wow, okay.
despite actually doing 8 interviews.
Okay, that's pretty
So something did go right.
good. Okay.
So Isa, as much as I would love to talk about Madcash, and I'm sure we will, maybe not today, but in the future,
Sure.
this is about you, right?
Okay.
This is about your story as a founder, right? So my opening question, if I may, is more about, talk a little about you, the person, your journey as a fintech founder.
Mhm.
How did it all start, right? What sort of triggered this move? And while you're actually sharing this story, talk about a couple of events, milestones, incidents which sort of made you the entrepreneur you are today, right?
Mhm.
Floor is
Okay.
yours.
All right. So I started my career as an engineer. So I used to work in a multinational. We worked in a factory. So I was an electrical engineer and I was practicing that. But then I had a group of friends and we had this challenge for each other. By the age of 30, we need to have our own company. So then years down the line, 3 of them are still in Motorola and then 3 of us went out. So that's what happened.
Interesting.
So that was the trigger that started it. But I started more of a engineering company. So we were doing software development, we were doing mobile apps. So that was what we did in the beginning. So this is my third company. So
Okay.
I've done 2. I've exited 1 and the other one is still running.
So this is your third
Yes,
startup, right?
yes.
And so what got Madcash going? What was the trigger behind that?
So I think it's more like it was during the pandemic and we wanted to just do something that actually help our community. So I didn't really intend to do a fintech, but it just kind of happened when we saw the right product market fit. I think, and then people started believing in us before we believed in ourselves.
Okay,
So-
that's very
so,
interesting.
Yeah, so that was more of it.
What's very impressive is that you guys knew what you wanted to be at 30 before 30.
Oh no, I wanted to do it in high school, because I tried doing the co-ops. I thought this is so fun, making money, going out, and then someone I did an interview to get a scholarship, and then he said that girls cannot be engineers, and that was why I wanted to be an engineer.
Right.
But I should have listened to him because I found it really boring. So I went
Well,
back to
okay. But I hope you did send him the degree when you did become an engineer, right?
Yeah.
Well, the point I was trying to make is, I'm well over 40 now. I didn't know what I wanted to be at 40, even in my 30s. So I guess this is a whole new generation, which is great. So a couple of points which come to me, and I do want to dwell into it, right? So a number of people have started their lives in the corporate world, right? And they move from corporate to the entrepreneur world. And a few of them actually say that, there's some good things that they were able to bring across, but there were a lot of other things that they had to unlearn. I like that word, unlearn. I wish I could unlearn most of the things I know. So talk about that transition for me, right?
Yeah.
As a person,
Yes, yes.
how did that play out?
Okay, so when I started as an engineer, I didn't really know how to talk to people because we were more machine oriented, right? And then like even picking up a phone, I had to hire a coach to teach me how to pick up a phone call, do the calling, and he was really great, right? Every time I did something wrong, he would be sitting next to me. And then when I did my first cold call and I wanted to go into this place and then they didn't pay attention to me, I went out and he said, go back in. And then they said no. And then he gave me the reasons and he said, go back in. So he kept sending me back into the store until I could actually talk to someone. So I thought it was a great learning experience. And then nowadays, if I see someone trying to sell me something, I would buy from that person because I remember how hard it was to learn to
you.
be a salesperson. I'm a sucker for this.
But how hard was it for you to ask someone to help? Because it's sometimes pretty hard, right? It's hard to kind of go out there and tell people that I'm not good at something or I want to improve something.
No, I think it was like
It was
I
easy.
guess it was coaching more. So I just
Yeah.
hired a coach who understood what I was going through, and then that helped me. But also I think it was just the fact that everybody was dependent on me. So when I started my first company, we brought in so many people, and then even though we had money, we didn't have that business acumen. So instead of hiring a salesperson, we'll turn this engineer into a salesperson. I was like, I can do it. And then a year later was when I closed my first deal. So it took a
Right.
year, right? So we burned a lot of money just doing that.
Okay.
Like in hindsight, I would have just hired someone who could do the job better, but then I wouldn't be who I am today.
Fair
Yeah,
enough. Fair enough. So it's money well spent.
I guess other
Right.
people's money, yeah.
Oh, we'll cut that bit off. But so again, that gives me the second question here. So obviously you hired a team, right? Talk about a little bit about the experience of having to lead a team from the front,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's not. I'm not saying engineers cannot be
Sure.
great leaders, but typically engineers are technocrats, and
Yes.
technocrats sometimes do have a
Yeah.
challenge in terms of
Exactly.
leadership, right?
Exactly.
Their EQ is sometimes not as high as their IQ.
Exactly. Because I think one of the things that people accuse me of in the beginning is that how cold I am and I'm just like a man. So I'm like, what do you mean? Like a man is allowed to be that way, but not a woman. So then I also tend to find that as a woman founder, I wanted to be loved all the time. So I do all kinds of stuff to be loved. So
Okay.
that people are not. If they don't want to do something, it's okay. I'll do it. If you don't want to do this, I'll do it. So that kind of stuff. So it took me a while to actually step out of that and to understand that I had another coach who told me you're carrying monkeys on your back. So you have to like be firm, tell people what they need to do, and then don't be afraid of what's going to happen after that. So but as a woman, it takes a long time to have people upset with you and to feel that you are not universally loved by everyone. So that kind of
So
stuff.
it's interesting. Thanks, firstly, for damning all men in the world as cold. I've never been called cold. I've been called talkative, but not cold. But maybe men are cold. Important question, right? So women entrepreneurship, right? So let's talk about that for a second. And again, I don't want to talk about the topic of women entrepreneurship, but I do want to talk about the challenges of being a women entrepreneurship. Women entrepreneurs and codify that for me. So in Malaysia, what were
Yeah.
the kind of challenges?
Um,
How did you overcome them?
So I think I'm lucky enough that in Malaysia, especially when doing software products and stuff, they don't see you as an individual. They see the product. And then to have a woman walk into the room, it brightens up their day. So usually it's
Okay.
men that come in, right? And we have that ability to just be seen as trustworthy because it's a woman. So I think it's an advantage to be a
So
woman.
you actually use it, you leverage, you turn it around on its head and you use it an advantage. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. So I've never actually really had challenges except for the fact that sometimes when you go to a very old school place and then they are serving drinks and they expect the women to be the one that
Okay.
serves the drink. And that's just
So let's take a step back, right? So you've been an entrepreneur for how long now?
20 years.
20 years, right? So that is, you could write a book by now, right? Unless you've already written one. Apologies, I don't know about it, right? So in 20 years, so I heard about some of the challenges that you talked about, that, you weren't a natural in certain activities, but you sort of kind of got the coach, you evolved. You also were very honest, which I actually like, that sort of vulnerability where you said, I could have hired somebody and possibly shortened the sales cycle. I didn't have to wait for a year. But again, you said, it wouldn't have made you the person you are. Summarize in your words, in your experiences, 2 incidences, 3 maybe, which were very, very hard for you and actually make you who you are beyond the ones that you've already shared with me.
So I think when I first started, I had a partner along, right? So then when we talk about, okay, we're going to do this, and then along the way, she had to like step back because she was focusing more on her child and homeschooling and stuff like that. And then I felt like this is like not a, it's not a balanced relationship. And then I got a little bit upset every now and then. Then she said, okay, let's end this relationship while we are still friends. So that was really difficult. I thought the fact that, again, I felt guilty. Was it me? And then, and can I do it on my own? And also the fact that the people who came on board, we used to be working together. Some of them were my seniors. And then all of a sudden, I'm the captain of the ship, right? So then just learning all that, I think it takes a while because I'm just not a very aggressive person in person. So it just took a while for that to happen. But mainly everybody understood in the end that you can't have so many captains on a ship.
So it's very interesting, right? So you highlighted two challenges, which actually, I've seen other people experience. So the first one is, sometimes working with a very good friend is never easy.
Yes.
Because, you're constantly moving from being a friend to being a working.
It's the fastest way to lose a friendship. Just do business with them.
I wanted you to say that because I was going to ask you. The second thing which you've actually said, and I think this is also specific to certain value systems of the part of the world we come from, and I come from a very similar part, where you default seniority of age to seniority of position, right? Which, there might be some correlation in certain activities and certain jobs, but it's not necessarily the case. And then we struggle with people who have seniority of age over us because, you always feel like this person's worked 20 years more than me. How can I be instructing them or telling them or encouraging them to do something? So that's very interesting, right? So what's the playbook then?
So I think in the first place, it's like when you bring people on board, you have to really define how we're going to work together. So I think this happened also in this current startup where I had people who come in, they look like they're volunteering their time and all that, but actually at the end of the day, they expected to be co-founders. So I didn't know that, right? I didn't expect that because we never had this discussion. So in their mind, it's clear. In my mind, it's clear. And actually no one was clear about it. So it just caused the whole thing to just, be uncomfortable, because again, I'm one of those, I love to be comfortable and I love to be loved, so those are the things.
And it's not easy, right? So firstly, this whole phenomena that I've seen over the last decade, that people who come later on in the business become co-founders, but they've never founded the business. I found it quite bizarre, but apparently that's the norm.
Yeah, because I started taking VC money and they insisted that I have a co-founder.
Fair enough. I understand the mechanism of that. And then if you don't actually, I guess, clarify the roles and responsibilities, the way people are going to be recognized, because we just want to be nice to people, it sort of builds up in some other part, and then there comes a point where it actually sort of blows into our faces.
And it's not fair to people who are in your company, because you don't get them to live up to the same standards, right? If somebody's not performing, you really have to look at how would you improve that. Now that we have gotten some funding, so we behave like a real company. So it used to be me doing everything, so now I've got actual people doing things, so I find
that's pretty good.
And I find that it's great to have people who are smarter than you join you, so that they can do things that are that you don't have to think about, and they will think about.
So I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball. Last question, right? As a founder, the next few years, you're obviously, you got funding that comes with an expectation for growth, right? Doing more things efficiently. What keeps you awake at night from a founder's perspective? I'm not interested to hear about the size of the opportunity and am I differentiated enough and will I hold pricing, but more in terms of as a founder, where do you feel, you're most vulnerable and you need to work most on?
Yeah, so I would say that to keep the dream alive, right? So you start with a specific reason why you're building it, and then you've got people coming in with money and telling you, oh, you should do this, you should do that. So then it's just figuring out who you want to be when you grow up, kind of thing, and then where we see ourselves 5 years down the line, and whether we're on the right path and keeping to that path, I think.
Yeah, so I think I personally think that's a very opportune time to sort of close the conversation, because I do think that keeping the vision alive, remaining persistent, being dogged, trusting in yourself, I think is, that's like a common theme with founders. Hence, I never became an entrepreneur, right? Because I got too many priorities in one day. But, I want to thank you.
Thank you.
I know this was a very short chat.
Yeah.
If I'm ever in Malaysia next, I will definitely look up Madcash.
Sure.
Although it's for women entrepreneur, but, maybe I could wear a wig or two. But appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
And I wish both you and your startup the very best for the future.
Thank you, Arjun.
Thanks for coming.
All right, bye.
Cheers.